At least 22 persons died after a two-story school building collapsed in Plateau State's Busa Buji community. Building collapses are becoming commonplace in Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, with more than a dozen such incidents recorded in the last 2 years. Authorities often blame such disasters on a failure to enforce building safety regulations, the use of substandard construction materials, and poor maintenance. In 2021, for instance, at least 45 persons were killed when a high-rise building under construction collapsed in the upscale Ikoyi district in Nigeria's economic capital, Lagos. In 2022, at least 10 persons were killed when a three-story building collapsed in the Ebutemeta area of Lagos. And since 2005, at least 152 buildings have collapsed in Lagos, according to a South African university researcher investigating construction disasters. Now joining me on the program to discuss this recent prevalent incidents is Professor Sadir Abubakar, is the President Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. Is, of course, joining from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. And also I have with me Kenneth Nduka, who is also joining virtually. He's the former president, Nigerian Institute of Building. He joins from Anambra State. Thank you for joining me, gentlemen. Let me start off with you, Kenneth. Can you let me first confirm, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Let me start off with you, Professor Abubakar. I mean, this seems to become, commonplace, where we see buildings, even though we know it's the raining season, collapse, and it looks pretty much commonplace these days. I'd like to know exactly your reaction, particularly with what happened recently in Plateau State, and just about 72 or 24 hours after, we had another one in Abuja.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, viewers. Good evening. I believe this phenomenon in our country will pain everybody, not only professional, anybody. That is becoming almost a daily event or weekly event in almost every part of the country, irrespective of the situation and the circumstances. The building collapse is something that I think is becoming a national, phenomenon that we need to, as a nation, rise up to it. I believe life and properties, and even confidence in terms of our capacity as a nation, and more closely to us as professionals in this sector of construction and built environment. It is something that we need to declare as emergency in our country. And I believe we need to put all hands on deck to be able to stem this a disaster that is happening to our people. And I believe the nation can rise up and we can do it. So, of course, the discussion will unveil itself on how we can be able to tackle this very, very ugly situation in our country.
Okay, I would come back to you, Professor Abubakar. Let me go to Mr. Nduka. Let me start by reading out some interesting statistics. Now, over 120 deaths related to building collapse were recorded. That's in 2014 alone. Now, between 2000 and 2010, there were 47 reported cases of building collapse, resulting in over 300 deaths in Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. According to this particular research by researchgate.net, it said that 60% of the building collapse occurs in Lagos State. 70% of collapsed building, are owned by private owners, and 70% of the collapsed building do not have approval prior to the building development. I would like you to react to these interesting numbers, Mr. Nduka.
Okay, before I can say something, I would say my condolences to all those people who've lost their lives in and all those subsequent collapses, and my pity to those who've lost their properties. My regrets as to all professionals, on behalf of all professionals, for the damage that is being done to the environment. The statistics you are reeling out is not far-fetched, and it could be more if the scenarios that excite building collapses are not tamed. If we look at it from the perspective of who are responsible for the delivery of construction works, what materials are being used, what regulations are government putting in place, what policy guidelines advise people who are involved in building construction. Then if you put all these things together and pigeonhole them, so to speak, you will see that we still have more collapses unless something positive is done.
All right, I'm going to stay with you on the quality of materials being used and the cost too. Most times when you have this conversation with people in the real estate space, particularly developers, they will tell you that due to the, the fluctuation, in currency exchange, building materials, for instance, have become expensive. And you see quite a number of them trying to cut costs. A typical, scenario is in Lagos, for instance. You have quite a number of buildings that are developed by these real estate developers. And then when you look at the quality of many of these buildings compared to what you would see or what, you have experienced maybe in the 80s and 90s, looking at the quality of these buildings compared to what they are constructing now, you can tell the difference. I'd like you to speak on this issue of the quality of materials used and the cost.
Yes, very straightforward. All of us know that now that we have medications are very expensive. Drugs are very expensive. And ordinary paracetamol that anybody could buy to stop a fever before seeing the doctor is so expensive now. But nobody will tell you that because paracetamol is expensive, then you decide to use chalk or cassava flour in place of paracetamol when you have fever. The issue and challenge we have has to do with attitude. When we talk of developers are trying to make cut corners, we talk of professionals trying to aid them in that regard. Then we talk of regulators like some Standard Organization of Nigeria and the rest of them that ordinarily should control the quality of what is being imported into Nigeria as building materials. If you look at all those things, and you can see that the pervasive perspective to it is attitude. If we know that we appreciate life, if we know that we appreciate the integrity of our nation state, if we know that people depend on our professional indemnity for them to possess or occupy buildings, then you will know that the issue of whether people want to make cut corners or to make maximum profits shouldn't have come in if we have a good attitude about what we want to achieve. There's one writer that says that when you come into a community, you can determine the civilization of that community by the quality of housing deliveries that populate the environment. Now, if you look at it from another perspective too, designs are properly made for, it's expected to have been properly made, respecting specification standards and quality, anticipated quality of delivery. But we're in a situation when designs are made and people who are supposed to deliver on those projects are not engaged. The professional stakeholders are not engaged to do their work. You will see that people who don't have ethics, professional code of ethics, can now come in and do whatever they want to do. They hold nobody responsible. There's no license to withhold. They just come in there, make their money, and leave it. At the end of the day, we have blighted city that is populated by very negatively or poorly delivered building structures. These are scenarios that I think when we go through this discussion, we'll be able to address what could be done to right those wrongs.
Thank you so much for the very robust analysis you gave, Mr. Nduka. I want to go back to Professor Abaka right now. Let's talk about regulations. Some have attributed quite a number of these collapses to practitioners not getting approval for their plans, to commence construction and, of course, the project. I'd like you to speak on the enforcement of regulations, itself. How does this, number one, how does the process work, and how does the agencies, responsible for this ensure that people adhere to this regulation? If a house or a building is meant for residential purpose, it's used for that and not used for commercial capacity. How, does this work?
I would like to maybe go a little back to tell you that the regulation traverse over quite some issues, as my colleague mentioned. See, we have aspect of design, we have aspect of material, and we have aspect of, for instance, geotechnical, and we have issue of workmanship, and we have authorization. Now, in these aspects, each and every one of them has, like you said, regulatory issues, stemming from the design, then the approval, and then the authorities that make approvals, for the sites, and regulatory bodies that make approval from the practitioners, and then regulatory bodies that also give permission for the assessment of the strength of the location, what we call topography and geotechnical investigations, whether that place has the carrying capacity. Now, in any of these regulations, there are procedures in two perspectives I will try to give you. There's what we call the ethics of the practitioner, and there's what we call the code and standards of the work itself. Now, in the construction and the built environment, the regulators are many. There are about 6, 7 of us from the perspective of the practitioners. You see, we have the engineers, which are regulated by Koren. We have the builders by Cobon. We have the architects by Akon. We have the surveyors. We have the quantity surveyors. We have the town planners. All these are members of what we call the built environment professionals. And we have what we call FORBEN. That is Forum for Regulators of the Built Environment. All these are members that I mentioned. Now, this is on the upstream side. On the downstream side, you have what we call the Development Office in each of the states, and FCT, where the designs, when are certified by the professionals, will be carried there.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So for someone to engage, in a building project, for instance, does he have to go through all of this regulatory bodies before he can get an approval?
He has to, but in a discreet manner. For instance, I'll give you the design. An architect can have the architectural design, but often in most of what we are discussing, issue of collapse, the design, the faulty aspect is that of structural design, which is the aspect of the engineers. And then you need to get a structure that is that's attuned to what has been approved. If it is a 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors, with the requisite structural stability and structural capacity. Once that is approved, as my friend was saying, alteration of designs. These are all the design value chain that we can see. You have approved a 3-story building, and you have carried to the development office. It has been approved. The site has been investigated to have the geotechnical capacity to carry that. And when you start, the foundation of everything has been done for a 3-story building. And then as you start, then we now come to what we call the poor workmanship, poor supervision. The expert that will come and supervise, the management consultant and what have you, may be compromised in a way. Or the development plan office may be compromised in a way when they see, a 3-floor story building is now becoming 7, 8. And then there is nobody is blowing the whistle. Nobody is giving a stop work order on that project, because maybe the developer or the owner, has gone and lobby to be allowed to increase, not minding what is going to happen to the structure. Maybe not in the immediate future, not in the immediate time, but in the long term, when there is what we call settlement in the geotechnical capacity of the area that has been developed. Now, these are part of the procedures that we need to carefully look at them, review them, apply sanction. And I can tell you, from the perspective of Koren, a lot of the culprits in many of the instances are, as said by my colleague, it is about material failure, or material, non-compliance, and then the developers or the clients, and then lack of stringent measure to be able to ensure that, we have a very loose system whereby consultants and practitioners can be dismissed by a developer, can be removed, and then the building continues. In other claims, once you give an ID for a design, after a consultant and a contractor have been appointed, that ID goes with that team. If for any reason any member of that team is being removed, you have to go back and seek a new approval. In other claim, this is what is being done, so that we don't see proliferation of new contractors, new consultants, because if for instance I have my integrity and I'm refusing to allow substandard things to be done, the developer will easily tell me to go away, and you look for somebody that can compromise, that will allow him to do what he wants.
So one thing you have highlighted that is a core problem in all of this is you keep using the word compromise, and I would like to put it in tandem to mean corruption. So who holds, let's say, this body is accountable for any building that collapses or that collapsed and has the approval of that agency to continue work?
Yeah, I tell you, in one of our experiences, we sanction, some of our colleagues who erred. I can tell you this vividly. We had the tribunal, the disciplinary tribunal, we had all the procedures and protocol, and then we discovered, when we are at the point of meeting the finality, we discovered that the law, did not provide any finality for non-registered professional, non-licensed professional.
So there's a vacuum in the law. It doesn't capture non-licensed professionals.
Yes, you see, in the law there is a big lacuna that what you call them developers, when they have this sharp bend, that we call it sharp practices, and a building collapse, go and check the law. There is no provision whatsoever for any penalty on somebody that cause the loss of life, loss of property. Most of the penalties are on the professionals, engineers, builders, architects, and a lot of these professional bodies, regulatory bodies, are doing the little they can in trying to prevent, their colleagues from quackery and from unethical practice. We manage that reasonably, but a large part of it is about material failure, which we have no control over. Is about the supervision, whereby the developer will hire and fire you. We have no control over there. So what I'm saying is that on a scale of 10, about 6 to 7 aspects of it is outside the purview of the regulators, because the regulator is only in a position to discipline, to interrogate registrant and members of the profession, whether you are an engineer or you are a builder or you are an architect or you are a surveyor or you are a quantity. So all those are reasonably we are doing that, but there are also some errors there. But I can tell you, we need to sit down and revisit the law of the construct and build environment to put under the radar the chunk part of those that are committing this crime and going scot-free in our country.
All right. Let me leave you for a moment, Professor Abaka, because we're pressed for time. Let me take Mr. Nduka's final thoughts. This question might be a bit unconventional, but I would ask anyway. Now, for a layperson who maybe wants to rent, an apartment, rent a building, how can you tell, just as a layperson, that this building is distressed? What are the physical signs?
That we need to mention. And those silent issues has to do that in construction process is there are 2 stages: the design stage and the construction stage. The design stage, from the design stage, you talk about the procurement processes, and it is properly regulated. The design stage is properly regulated in the sense, for example, that you cannot start a building without a building design. At least it is enforceable. Now, when we talk then about the construction stage, you see, from the design stage to the construction stage, there are parameters that are required to be on ground. All the production documents in terms of the drawing, the designs should be there. There are 3 other documents that are still not being given life to. And these are the construction program, the project quality plan, the project health and safety plan, and the buildability and maintainability plan. You see, when you build, when you design, there is what is called design review, which is jointly done with the team of designers and the people who will build that project. There is where you share ideas on how possible the methodology of approach for the building design and how it can be effected on site, knowing fully well that the factors that border on the peculiarities of that site has been addressed. But when you come to the building, the construction stage, you discover that nothing is regulated. It's an all-commerce affair. For you to know whether a building is done properly, you should be able to know whether there is a program that drove the construction of that house. You'll be able to know whether there's a project quality management plan. That project quality management plan ensures that the specifications that are being given by the design team are respected while construction is going on. There is no evidence to show that the project health and safety plan, which should anchor the safety of the project execution and the environment, is there. The buildability and maintainability, to be sure that this, especially this one, maintainability relates to buildings that are existing, because if a building is designed and constructed and the proper maintenance procedures are not identified, you discover that when those maintenances are not done, the integrity of the structure will be compromised. But let me put it this way. we have a national building code, and we are supposed to have the building control agency in every state. It's not enough to say development control. Development control has to do with economic use and plan of land and location of buildings and environment, making sure that the ecosystem of the environment is properly balanced. But when it comes to delivering the products, the building control unit is the people that will now go and say, are you building according to the drawing? Do you have any construction program for this work? Are you doing all the quality tests that are provided in the project quality plan? What safety arrangements have been made to ensure that every activity on that site is safe and proper? Building can collapse even when the structural integrity is okay. Ordinarily, the methodology, moving an equipment and across a construction site can destabilize the design integrity of a structure. So when you look at all these things, you say, how do we enforce? The National Building Code, for example, provides for stage compliance at every stage of the building, from setting out excavation to block work, first level, second level. Any building that does not enjoy the attestation for compliance tests, that compliance at each stage of the delivery, is a showstopper. It is an accident waiting to happen, because there is no professional that indemnify the public of the risk factors engendered at that stage of the building. If and when such evidence are established, you will now see that if a building collapses, it can be easy for one to go forensically to identify who approved this building, who were involved, who certified that stage. But as it is now, it is not possible, because the role of professionals are not adequately allowed for. Now, if you now look at generally on buildings that are collapsed, that have collapsed, if you look at them, like the one in Jos, somebody was showing the distance of what is called rings, stair-ups, which they call commonly on site rings. That's about 600 mm. If it is 600 mm, what are the sheer integrity of those columns that are carrying those?
I'm afraid that we need to go.
Somebody is supposed to supervise that project to ensure as much as possible that the specifications are there. So answering your question in totality is that any building that does not respect the role, the engagement of the professionals that are supposed to do specific jobs, which has to do with the construction stage, delivering on site, such project there's a problem.
All right. Thank you so much for your insights on all of this, Mr. Nduka. Just in 30 seconds, is it okay for an occupant of a building to request for the blueprint? Does the law cover that, in case maybe you want to, maybe rent an apartment or a building? Is it okay to ask for the blueprint?
To be on the safe side, if you're going into a new building, you can get a building facility inspector, okay? A building controller that will be in a position to enable you evaluate that building structure and give you a professional opinion on what should be done or whether that building met the required standards. Okay. It is only that professional that will be in a position to look at those factors, to look at those documents that were used to deliver the building and tell you are home and dry. Or, look, there's more to it than meets the eye.
All right. Thank you so much.
A professional looking at the building immediately, in terms of alignment, in terms of finishes, in terms of the breed, buildings breed, in terms of finding out whether the building is sick or not, we'll be able to tell you, my brother, look, I have challenges.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kenneth Nduka. And of course, many thanks to you also, Professor Sadir Abubakar, President of the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria. And also Kenneth Nduka is the former President of Nigerian Institute of Building. Gentlemen, once again, thank you for your time on the program.